Okay, it's officially 8:30. My name's Ron, I'm an alcoholic. I'd like to welcome you all back. It's been, 14 and a half months without a live meeting. We got a couple ground rules. We have to wear the mask during the meeting. It's the church's stipulations, so please be mindful of that. I know it's going to be like that for a little bit, but until they change the policy, we're here at the behest of the church, so we have to honor their wishes. Be mindful of the men's room and the women's room. Their congregation uses that Sunday morning, which is tomorrow morning. So please leave it as clean as possible because that's what they complained about. We used to have a separate bathroom, but they blocked that off. What else we got to talk about? I don't even know, but listen, it's just great to be back. Great to see you guys. It's really good. Nick's going to come up here and share this. We're going to have some fun. Next week we got Robbie W. coming in. That'll be a party. We got Brandon Novak scheduled, I think, for the first week in June, and we're locking them all back in for next month. It's next year, really. We have 52 exciting speakers. Hopefully, our speaker tonight, we raised the bar. We coached him up. we squeezed it. Anyway, welcome up, Nick. Thanks, guys. Come on in.
Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Nick and I am an alcoholic. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 p.m. till 7:30 right here. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teachings of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from the message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new or from out of town that would like to introduce themselves with their first name? Yes, sir.
My name's Evan. I'm an alcoholic.
Welcome.
Steve, alcoholic, Camden, New Jersey.
Welcome. Welcome. Okay. Welcome. All right, welcome everybody. Welcome back. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and is willing to sponsor, please raise your hands. Super. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? Yes. Yes.
I'm an alcoholic. Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. It Takes a Village. It's on Zoom. They kind of went dead over quarantine and we're trying to restart it. So if you would like the code, just see me or Nick after the meeting.
Thanks for your service. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm Meredith. I'm an alcoholic. On Sundays at 12 noon is a spectacular, fabulous, incredible good book breakdown. It's at Bensalem Baptist Church. Please see me after the meeting. And in May 16th, it will be over back at the Jamison Park in Warwick. So, I can park anyway. Thanks.
Excellent. Yes.
Hi, I'm Teresa. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Teresa.
The Big First group, which meets in Quakertown Monday nights at 8 o'clock. We will be resuming our meeting Monday 8 outdoors.
Excellent. Thank you all for your service. We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see myself or any home group member after the meeting. If you can't afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big book and CDs to help those who can't afford them can put donations in the jar on the table marked Big Book and CD Donations. If you'd like a CD of any speaker past or present, please see myself or Ron before or after the meeting. They're available free of charge. And with that, I have Daryl to come up and read the 12 steps of recovery.
Hi, my name is Daryl, and I'm an alcoholic. These are the 12 steps of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our lives and our will over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so will injure them or others. 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And step 12, having had a spiritual awakening, as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And Teresa's coming up here to read a preamble.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Teresa. I'm an alcoholic. Our AA preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
We have a 7th tradition which states every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, we'd like to pass the baskets. We have no dues or fees, but we do have expenses. This group provides many services. Their donations cover rent, big books, CDs, events, and workshops. Just a reminder, there is absolutely no smoking on church property. At this moment, please silence your cell phones and try to limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. Okay, at this time, I'd like to introduce our speaker, a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group, Marin H. from There Is a Solution Group in Delaware.
All right. What's up, everybody? My name is Marin. I'm a grateful, recovered alcoholic. I was given explicit instructions not to give my last name. I typically do, but if you want to know my last name after the meeting, by all means, please feel free to ask me. So, anyone ever in the room, you don't have to admit this if you don't want to. If you still think you have street cred and you're in AA, you don't have to admit this. Anyone ever be overwhelmed with a moment of gratitude before? So much that where, you kind of cry a little and it's something emotionally wells up in you. That actually happened to me a couple days ago. So my mother-in-law was about to go to a meeting, and I usually do big book meetings. If you're expecting to hear any war stories, anything about what happened out there when I was running around, as the kids call it these days, ripping and running and whatever, you're not going to hear any of that. My war stories can't keep me sober. They're not going to keep you sober. We're going to stay out of that stuff. But so she asked me, though, she looked at me and she said, "How long do you have to keep doing this?" And she was, implying that how long do I have to keep going out and giving to Alcoholics Anonymous? She didn't say it that way. She said, "How long do you have to keep going and doing this stuff?" That's what she called it. She's not an alcoholic. She might have a few of the isms. She is my mother-in-law after all, but she's not one of us. Right? And so it kind of struck me a little bit. Anyone that knows me knows it's very hard for me to be speechless. But for a moment I was. Because it made me think for a second. Like, I don't have to do this. I get to do this. Like the gratitude that hit me was the day, December 27, 2014, that thought came back to me when I walked into Horsham Clinic. Or maybe stumbled in to Horsham Clinic. And I wanted to die. That's what hit me, right? That's what hit me that day. That day when I didn't know which direction was up, which direction was down. I did know that I didn't like this part in here. I wasn't a big fan of me at the moment. Although I might have told you I was. See, my words were much different than what was going on in here. See, my soul was rotting from the inside out. I didn't have an ability to connect on a human or emotional level with any other person on planet Earth. I didn't have an ability to do so. Although I didn't know it then. right? And at the time, my life on paper doesn't actually look so bad, right? My life on paper, I've got, a house, 2 cars, wife, 2 kids, and a dog at the time. None of them would look at me, but it doesn't really matter here. So I go to Horsham Clinic, I go in there, and just like most good sponsees, I call my sponsor after I go into treatment, right? So I can only imagine, right? If if I actually went to that phone list and I made a phone call. The phone list. You guys get phone lists in your meetings where you're at. Like anyone that's new, what they'll do is they'll raise their hand and say they're fresh out of their local asylum. Oh, sorry, we call them rehabs and detoxes now. We even sugarcoat those names. In the big book, they call them sanitariums and asylums, so we can call it that still. Let's just bring it back old school a little bit, right? They just got out of their local asylum, right? And they say, let's get little Timmy a list of all names and phone numbers, right? And I think the theory behind that isn't bad, but what it implies is little Timmy that the first step doesn't apply to him. Right? The first step, if I'm powerless, right? Lack of power is my dilemma, then a phone list will be perfectly effective when the thought crosses my mind to drink. See, for me, I'm wired a little different. I'm what the big book calls a real alcoholic. So for somebody like me, when I was asked by my mother-in-law, how long do you do this? My thought is, I get to do this. I should not be alive, right? This is Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm going to respect Alcoholics Anonymous because I love it so much. I love it just as much as it angers me, but that's a whole nother subject. But the point is, I love AA so much that I'm not going to pollute it, so to speak, with the talks of the other things that I used alcoholically, right? I used substances alcoholically. I used food alcoholically. I used coffee alcoholically. I just had a cronut that I used as alcoholically as possible before right? So like for real. Like I use people alcoholically. Can anyone maybe relate to that? Right? So for somebody like me, to get to do this is the only reason, right, that I'm still alive today. And so I'll give you a little brief synopsis of kind of how it went down. So I went into the local asylum, Horsham Clinic. Anyone that's ever, and I mentioned this before, anyone that's ever been to a place with rubber pillows, rubber mattresses, you stood in a med line and they checked your vitals every 2 hours, you've been to an asylum too. Okay? So when I went to this little asylum, I called my sponsor like a good sponsee. I told him I'm in Horsham Clinic. He said, I know. I've got caller ID. So he said, he kind of said what happened, or I don't really remember exactly, but I did tell him over the phone that I didn't want to live anymore. I was too, for lack of a better term, I was too scared to kill myself. I was too scared to live. I was in that middle area, right? And I was able to vocalize it somehow, that I didn't want to live anymore. And he said, do you have your big book with you? And I didn't know because my wife had already had my bag packed for me when I got home. Anyone else have someone in their life that when we called them over the phone and we were intoxicated, they already knew it? Like just by our voice, even the way we were breathing, right? I got one of those. I'm blessed enough that she's still in my life today. And my bag was already packed. So I went and looked at my bag, and on the very top was a pristine, untouched, no folded, no underline, no highlight, perfectly ready to go, 4th edition, Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I ran back over to the phone, and I told him that my big book, I have it. And this was his directions to me. He said, sit down with someone and read the doctor's opinion with them while you're in there. And I said to him, Chris, I can't do that. I'm not even technically sober. Why would I go and do that? I can't teach anybody anything. And then in a extremely zen, calm, even-keeled tone, he said to me, maybe you'll learn something stupid. Right? Maybe you'll learn something stupid. So we hung up the phone. I don't remember really much about the people that I sat across from. when we did the doctor's opinion in Horsham Clinic. Here's the kind of things that we discussed. We discussed what was in the literature. For example, when we talked about a physical allergy, I don't know if you can relate to this or not. Alcohol as a liquid is technically and scientifically a central nervous system depressant. What that does for the normal general population, which is a fun thing too, by the way. If you are acquainted with any non-alcoholics, which more than likely you are, ask them what it's like when they drink alcohol. To me, it's hilarious. Because what they'll say things like, well, I get a little bit of an upset stomach, or I start to feel a little fuzzy, or I feel a little out of control, and it's like, it just makes me laugh because my reaction is the exact opposite, right? I have an abnormal reaction to a central nervous system depressant. I get energy from it. I'm ready to go. Forget the job, right? Do I have enough money in the bank account to get me through the rest of the night? Let's go, rock on, I'll figure it out tomorrow. I don't feel out of control. I feel in control when I put alcohol into my system. I don't feel light and fuzzy. I feel crystal clear. Right? My reaction is completely abnormal to that. And so that's what I discussed with them. We discussed what does a physical allergy look like for you? What does it look like for me? Discussing those things. And then we talked about, right, the phenomenon called craving. Right, so once I put it in my system, there is no way I'm going to be able to know how much I'm going to put in. That's just for me. Some people are able and can control or moderate their drinking. And to me, when I say that out loud, it almost seems like it's impossible because I don't understand it. I don't get it. It's not me, right? But the phenomenon of craving happens too for the alcoholic is before we actually take that first drink. Right? What is the thought processes preceding the first drink? Right? That's really where the crux in the problem is. Right? Because if you're like me, every time I relapsed in the past, I did it sober. Alcohol is not my problem. It turns out that's my solution to my problem. I didn't know it at the time, though. I didn't know that. So I'm sitting there, we're just talking about those things. It's 6 or 7 days, a little hazy, I don't remember exactly. They only let you sleep every 2 hours while they check your vitals. It woke me up and kept me up most of the time. And then I went to another local sanitarium, Eagleville Hospital. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that fine establishment. It's right by Eagleville Prison. I'm not familiar with that either. Right there. So I went there and did the same thing. I was in contact with my sponsor a little bit. My wife wouldn't answer the phone, which is fine. And we'll get to exactly why that was, why she wasn't answering the phone in a little bit. It's part of the way the Big Book has us working with other people. Then insurance ran out. That's a whole nother discussion. We'll talk about insurance another time. But my insurance ran out, and they said, you got to go tomorrow. So I called my sponsor. I called him, and I said, listen, I'm getting out tomorrow. He said, okay. What time do you want me there? I'll come pick you up. So he did. He picked me up, and we discussed a few things on the way home from there. Not to my home, but to his home. And he was teeing me up for something we like to call an inventory. But this is what we discussed on the way to his place. We discussed admitting powerlessness is not the most difficult thing for an alcoholic like me to do. In fact, it's pretty easy. I used to actually say that I'm powerless over alcohol while at the bar. I'm about to trigger the mental obsession. Right? Like I knew, I had knowledge. I had a little bit of information before, haha, it's funny. And then there's bars that'll take your AA chips and get you free drinks for them. There's those out there, right? I would seek those ones out, right? So I know powerlessness is not impossible for me to understand. Like I grasp that concept. Unmanageability, I had to learn, is an internal condition. I have an utter inability to manage my emotional states. So it's not unmanageability, meaning I'm living underneath a bridge, meaning I'm eating out of dumpsters, any of those things. It has nothing to do with anything external. Unmanageability. You might have those things. That's not part of my story. It might be part of yours. But that doesn't make you alcoholic or your life unmanageable. Unmanageability is an internal condition. I can't manage my emotional states, which means when something seemingly good happens, I am elated and through the roof. Right? Like on all these flyers we're seeing. Epic. right? Everything is just unbelievable. Things are great. Something seemingly bad happens. I am down in the depths, depressed, right? Low energy level, can't get out of bed, right? It's no wonder that a lot of us do get misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder, because a lot of that stuff clinically, I could say that because I actually work for a treatment center, but clinically, that stuff sounds a lot like a bipolar disorder. But for a lot of us, we get misdiagnosed with that stuff only because I can't manage anything in the middle. I've got no ability. I'm either pinned into the red or down into the blue. I have no anywhere in between. So there's your first step. Anyone that hasn't taken the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and you're in a 12-step fellowship, or at least haven't started the 12 steps, you're probably wasting your time. So while you're here tonight, we're going to do our best to get the cognitive steps accomplished, and the action steps, maybe we'll get you teed up for that after the meeting. So the second step, came to believe, right? This is what we started talking about in a more of a conversation type way, right? Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So it doesn't say you have to come to believe. See, that's what I thought. 13 years in and out of AA. I thought the second step was that I had to come to believe something. Just the wording itself tells me I did not. Right? But what is it that we came to believe? That a power, right, greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Restoration, like restoring an old car. I don't have any car guys or car nuts out there that restore old cars, but the idea is you find this old shell of a car somewhere, like Antiques Roadshow or out somewhere, and right, go barn picking, and you find one, right? You pull it out of there, and you restore it inside and out. Right? You not only make it look good on the outside, get it back, but you also get it back to working order. To restore means to bring back to its former glory. Right? So we're restoring our sanity, which means it's between our ears. Sanity means soundness of mind. That also implies that at some point, much like that old broken down car, that we had sane thinking at one point. That we're getting restored back to that. And that's where the third step comes in, right? We make a decision. A decision without action is fantasy, right? So if I decide, to take this microphone, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm deciding right now to take this microphone and to throw it at that clock. But I'm not doing it. I made a decision, but I didn't take any action. It means absolutely nothing without the action in place. Are you kind of picking up what I'm throwing down here, right? So a decision in the third step is only as good as the action that follows. What am I actually deciding? I'm deciding to turn, right, which means to shift or pivot, right, my will and my life, which directly translates to my thoughts and my actions, right, which, for the record, are absolutely terrible. Just for the record. I mean, I'm just letting you a little bit on the inside here. My thoughts and my actions were awful for a number of years. They did not perpetuate health and wellness. What they did is they perpetuated anger, resentment, frustration, misery, pain. And that was just in the people that love me. Not in me. I had a solution for those things. Alcohol, right? But that was in the people that love me. That was a creation of those things. My will and my life, my thoughts and my actions. That's what it created. Those things in my loved ones. And anyone that got anywhere near me. Right, so they're my thoughts and my actions, not good. Especially not good for me. I have a solution for that though. Right? A couple shots of Jack Daniels and I'm feeling okay. Right? My will and my life, directly, like I said, the thoughts and actions, not good for others. Right? So turn over to the care of God. The word care, I have a sneaking suspicion that for 13 years while I was in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous, it didn't say the word care in the third step. Because I never saw it. The word care. That's the part of the restoration process that we were talking about. The last time that I had sane thinking was the last time that I was 100% cared for. And that was when I was an infant. Right? Anyone, ever hold a baby before? Right? If you ever held a baby before, you know, or even been around kids and stuff, little kids, right? Before there's any kind of mental corruption, right? That's what we can call it. That's what happens, right? We're born with the 3 pillars of spirituality: faith, love, and trust. We're born with those things. And again. You can just look into the eyes of a newborn baby and know that we're born with those things. We don't have an ability to fend for ourselves the second we're born. Some animals out there in nature are able to do that. The human is not. So we have to have faith, love, and trust, or we will not survive. It's part of the human condition. We all have it in us. We have to get down and get restored to that. So the care part of the third step is I'm turning my will and my life over to the care of God, where I get to be cared for again. It's a different degree, obviously. We can get into the nuances if you want, but we don't have much time. But the point is, there's a different degree of care, but we get cared for, right? And it's over to God as we understood Him. I'm not going to shy away from the fact that God is doing for me what I could not do for myself. That without God, without the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, I would not be here today. There is no point in shying away from any of that. It mentions God more than drinking in the 12 steps. There's a certain level of importance that comes along with all that. But at that point, taking a third step in my sponsor's car on the way to his house, right? God, as I understood Him, was, I know it's not me. That's all I really knew. Because when I play God, I devastate some things. It's down in flames. It wasn't proposed to me that way. It was more proposed to me as, you're not doing so well. It's not looking so good for you right now. Are you saying that you are the one more than likely making the decisions? It's kind of like, I don't know, if you take any professional sports team, it's not always the players. Sometimes it's the management level. Not so good. All right, sorry, Eagles fans. I didn't mean to bring anything up for you. But that's the point. The point is that there's some management stuff going on there. And I'm terrible at that. That's all I needed to know. I also needed to know, at almost every meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, we read how it works, which, by the way, is a promise. You ever read the title of that chapter as a promise before? What about there is a solution? That's a promise too. Right in the title of the chapter. And we blaze right by it. We'll sit in our local little clubhouse, we'll read the whole chapter in a meeting, and be like, oh man, that was so good. Now let me talk my problems for an hour. We'll get to that. We'll get to that, I promise. I promise. All right, so we get back to his place, okay? And he slides a notebook across the table and he tells me to write down the people, institutions, and principles that I'm angry at. Anyone that knows the book knows where this is going. Right? We're writing an inventory. I needed triage. My illness was next level. I didn't see it. He saw it. I was bleeding. I didn't know. I'm bleeding out. And I had no idea. And he's performing spiritual triage in that moment because he knew that if I were to walk out that door without the wound being closed, I was going to bleed out and I was not going to survive it. This is life or death. Is it? When we bring up our electric bill at our local AA meeting, is that life or death? When was the last time we were just so struck with gratitude that we saw a newcomer come in and the last person that we helped take through the 12 steps walks up to him and offers him a big book and a solution? It gives me chills up and down my spine thinking about it. That's why I almost fell to my knees in gratitude when my mother-in-law asked me that. I get to see that. I get to. I don't have to. Get to. First name on my resentment inventory was my father. Reason was because I never thought I'd live up to his expectations. He never told me he was proud of me. Parts of self that are affected by that are my ambition, my self-esteem, my personal relationships. My sponsor leans back in his chair and he asks me a question that no one ever asked me before. He said, how was your father raised? Well, he was raised by an abusive, alcoholic Quaalude addict who would beat him and his siblings and his mother every single day until he could escape and go to the Navy. He said, well, did your father ever hit you? I know this is not the same for most people. and I'm not saying this to brag, but I'm just telling you my experience. My father never physically abused me. He looks at me and goes, "So you mean to tell me, you, sitting with 2 sons at your house, your father quite possibly stopped the cycle of physical abuse from father to son in your family tree forever? Did you ever consider that?" No. I am selfish and self-centered. I do not think about other people. I think about me and what I can get from them. And when I wasn't getting enough from him, I was angry at him. I was resentful at him. It was his fault. Just so you know, victims don't get well in Alcoholics Anonymous. That's why we do these things, to learn we are not victims. Right? So that resentment, I actually, for lack of a better term, right, tattooed it onto every single adult male relationship my entire life. All my teachers, all my coaches, all my peers, all the people who tried to sponsor me, any other adult male, I tattooed that relationship, that onto them, that resentment. That's why resentments are, in the book calls, in quotes, the number 1 offender. It kills more alcoholics than anything else. Why? Because from it stem all forms of spiritual disease. That's why we hit those early in the inventory process. First thing, we should wait to do those. We don't want to drudge up anything. It's already in there, wreaking havoc, killing people. We don't want to dust any of that stuff up. Yeah, we do. We have to. 1 person dies in the United States from alcoholism and drug addiction every 3 minutes. We sit here and eat our cronuts for an hour, talk shop for an hour, while there's 20 families less a family member because of this illness. I take that personal. There's a lot of work to be done out there. There's a lot of sick people out there. I don't want to hurt little Timmy's feelings. I don't want to scare him and talk about God. Well, little Timmy might just leave that meeting without being offered a solution to the problem. If he's not offered a solution, what are we really doing? So I write down a bunch of resentments, a bunch of fears, write down the sex conduct. No, I'm not going to go over any of my sex conduct up here. My point is this. I wrote it all down. I shared it with my sponsor. We went over some things. Here's what we realized. In a general way, I was inconsiderate, dishonest, self-seeking, and fearful. Under those things came a lot of other little bits and pieces and other whatever, but the whole umbrella of me, inconsiderate, dishonest, self-seeking, and afraid. Big time. 100%. Batting 1,000. Right? That's a baseball term for hitting every pitch that comes at you out of the park. That was me. Right? Selfishness and self-centeredness, our book tells us, is the root of our troubles. What does the root of a plant do? The root of a plant is basically where all the nutrition comes from. A plant can only grow as wide as its root system. It's science. Right? But yet in our book tells us that that's the root of my troubles. That means that my troubles, right, it can only grow as wide as that. It's like when Bill was looking at Ebby when he was in his doorway. He said there was something about his eyes. His roots grasped new soil. Ooh, good stuff, right? He was getting more nutrition from somewhere else. He was able to grow bigger, wider, stronger. Right? We get better in here. Oh, Marin, I got to stay sick the rest of my life in AA. What a bunch of, all right, I won't say it. Phooey. If I was going to stay sick, I might as well at least have a solution to this with alcohol. I might as well. So the only timestamp in the big book is it tells you to take an hour after the inventory. Make sure you make mortar without sand and all that. And so I sat down. The best hour I could come up with was about 40 minutes. So then I went back to my sponsor and begged him to keep going because I was still stuck with me. There was still the thought processes were up here. I was still thinking about trying to get back home, right? Trying to sleep in my bed, right? I hadn't seen my wife in, this was 25 days that I've been in treatment, so I hadn't seen her in 25 days. So I was thinking a lot about those stuff. I wanted to hug my kids, you know, like that's what was going on up here. A lot of I's, my's, and me's, if you think about what I just said. If you want to realize how selfish and self-centered we are, just think about maybe the last 10 minutes and how many I, my's, and me statements you made. Just saying. I do that when I want to be humbled by how much I think I can run the show. So we shared a couple more things. That one that I wasn't going to tell any other living human being. I was going to take it to my grave, and I told him anyway. And he said, "That's it?" And I said, "Yeah." We read on page 76, steps 6 and 7. He made me sure to know that I made my lists when I made inventory to make amends, and that he was going to be picking me up tomorrow at 6, not 6 p.m., 6 a.m. He drove me around that day. The next day, I actually went to my house that night, and here's that part that I was talking about, why my wife didn't answer the phone, is because my sponsor was in contact with her the entire time, letting her know some things. Here's what he let her know. He said, if your husband comes back from treatment and starts talking about getting the job back, starts talking about putting money in the bank, starts talking about anything material, you better bolt down the TV because it's going to be at the local pawn shop down in Kensington. But he might come back talking about a couple other things. He might be carrying around this book. It's a blue book with print in it. He might be carrying that around. Might be talking, he might say the word God a few times. It's pretty weird, right? He might be bringing some newcomers over to the house, and they're going to talk about some weird stuff like inventories and amends and stuff like that. If he starts doing that stuff and continues to do that stuff, you guys are going to be just fine. Happy, joyous, and free. Right? So she had a nice little spot for me set up on the couch. When we get back to my house, my sponsor tells me, do this. Make amends to everyone in your house. Start with the dog. No, better yet, start with the kids. Then do the dog and practice. And then make amends to your wife. He made sure to remind me that amends are not for me, they're for them. The alcoholic gets the benefit of the amend on the back end, not on the front end. And if you say you're sorry, you have to do it again. Right. So, I did that. My wife looked at me with amused skepticism and said, I'll believe it when I see it. My kids just were happy to see me. They gave me a big old hug. The dog seemed, I don't know, okay with it. And Chris picked me up the next morning. We read this little part of the book called On Awakening. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that part of the book. It's on page 86. It tells you exactly what to do in the morning when you wake up and throughout the day. It tells us we're undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in this way. In other words, I'm not going to be able to do it on my own. I might need this direction and outline to do. So he did that. We went, running around a little bit, and then started making phone calls on the people on my amends list, shaking like a leaf. This is my hand with the paper, shaking like a leaf, loaded with fear. I didn't have an opportunity to be paralyzed by fear because my sponsor was sitting there right next to me. That big old cheerleader. Every time I would make that phone call and maybe sit down with someone, right? He would wait in the car for me to come back out and he'd be like, isn't it great you know God better? Like, God, if you weren't bigger than me, I'd knock you out. I did not want to hear that. Isn't it great you know God better? Oh, stop it. I get in the car, yeah, I know God better, fine, before he even said anything. We got to the end of the day, and he said, if you want to survive this thing, there's a couple things that I suggest. One is when you get home, right, do the when you retire at night part of the book. And then at every meeting you go to for about the next year, raise your hand when they ask for any AA-related announcements. Say your full name is what he said, right? Let them know you're a recovered alcoholic and that you're looking for people to take through the steps because your life depends on it. So I did that following night, at a little place called Holy Family University in northeast Philadelphia. A gentleman by the name Chris, another Chris in my life. Got a lot of Chris's in my life. Ran that big book study up there. I raised my hand in the beginning. I said that. He gave me a little nod, which was like an approving nod, which felt pretty good. And lo and behold, after that meeting, a guy came up to me. His name was Mike. Mike was shaking like a leaf. Said, Marin, I heard what you said. I'm dying. I need help. How much sobriety time do you have? I looked at him and told him what my sponsor told me to tell him, enough to be useful. When do you want to get started? So we sat down. We talked about the first 3 steps. I gave him my book. And I said, I can't stay out much later. My wife doesn't trust me. She's got the GPS on in the car. It's called OnStar. If you're familiar with that, with the GM products, right? She knew right where I was. And I didn't have much time. So if you're really serious about this thing, there's directions right here in the book on how to write an inventory. It goes right through it. He calls me the next day and said he stayed up all night and he wrote an inventory. If I'd like to get together with him and he would share it with me. I said, okay. We met in a diner in Jersey. So at that diner in Jersey, we sat there. I don't remember the waitress's name and I couldn't pick her out of a lineup, but I did know she could pour an empty cup of coffee better than anybody. Every time we were running low on coffee, boom, bam, bam, bam. It's like she almost knew we needed it. We sat there for a few hours and we shared some things. We actually shared an inventory. I shared some of mine, he shared some of his. I asked some of the same questions that my sponsor asked me with him. And after we were done, I can't tell you how long it was, but it was about a 40-minute drive back to my place. I got in the car, started driving. About halfway through that drive, some very profound things happened while I was in that car. One of them was I realized that I'd gone halfway home without the radio on. Doesn't seem like that big of a deal to most people, but I was at peace with me. It wasn't like that 40 minutes when I was sitting at my sponsor's house after an inventory. It wasn't like that. It was much different. I was at peace with who I was, with my thoughts within here. The next thing that I realized was probably close to, if not the most controversial thing I say in the room of Alcoholics Anonymous, because this is still true to this day, that in that moment it had been 27 days without a thought or obsession to use drugs or alcohol. That is true to this day. The power of God goes deep. And I will not hide the fact that God removed my obsession to use drugs and alcohol. You can't say that to a newcomer. Why not? Well, I didn't get sick overnight. I can't get well overnight. Well, if you could, would you? Or do you like your little excuses? Do you like your resentments? I bet you like that, don't you? You like to be a victim, don't you? You like the excuse to go out and drink again. You said this to me. You did this. I didn't get a raise. Come on, man. I didn't get sick overnight, so I can't get well overnight. Let's look at the experiences of the folks that are in our book. Bill Wilson. You guys ever hear that guy? Right? He wrote in his story that he recovered in his hospital bed in his 3rd treatment in an asylum called Towns Hospital in New York. He did all 6 tenets of the Oxford group, which is just like the 12 steps, in his hospital bed. While he was there, he wanted to impress upon others that were there that they could get better. Even before that. You guys, Ebby Thatcher, hear that cat, right? Ebby Thatcher approached Bill Wilson while he was drinking at his kitchen table, while Bill Wilson was. Did they tell Ebby Thatcher to wait a year to help other people? No, they did not. Ebby Thatcher was 2 months sober. Did they tell Ebby Thatcher to stay away from people, places, and things? No, they did not. They told him the exact opposite. Go find the worst drunk you know. You've had a spiritual awakening. You're good. Go find the worst drunk you know and offer this to them. Were they writing down triggers lists? I'm an alcoholic. What I breathe in and out is a trigger. Like for real. Trigger list. Meeting list. Gratitude list. Oh, they sound so good. Clinically, that's okay. That's a way to get through an hour and a half long group. Are we doing the same things in AA? You don't have to answer that question honestly. Let's pretend like we're not. Then why is our success rate so bad? A couple months later, I had the privilege of constantly sponsoring other men in Alcoholics Anonymous, and there was this one guy, his name was Frank. Frank was so fired up. He went to that Friday night Holy Family meeting. He was living at a halfway house like 2 miles down the road. So fired up for this thing. He's like, you have to show me what you're doing. He's all excitable. Like, what is excitable type? We all know the types, right? It's like really excited. His arms are always moving, right? Just a really excitable dude. I'm like, yeah, all right, let's go. He's like, right now. So he was telling me right now he needed triage. We went over to his halfway house. I had a little bit more trust at that time. And went over there, and we went through the first 3 steps. He wrote an inventory. Powerful stuff. And I'll just say this. There are some things that the human being should not go through. That's all. Right? And so he shared his inventory with me. There was a lot of crying, a lot of hugging. Before COVID, don't worry. And it was powerful, man. I was so lit up on the way home. It was just awesome. A couple days later, I got a phone call from an odd number I'd never seen before. Answered it. A really meek, kind of low female voice on the other line says, "Is this Marin?" Yeah, it says. So this is Evelyn. This is Frank's mom. Just want you to know they found Frank's body last night. He was overdosed in a hotel down in North Philadelphia. I wanted you to know that he spoke so highly of you. I was devastated. Devastated. So devastated where I thought, I can't do this anymore. It weighed so heavy on my heart. So I called my sponsor. I told him what happened. Told him the phone call I just got. And he asked me a question. He said, did God saw fit to remove your obsession to use drugs or alcohol, didn't he? I said, yeah, he did. I said, just so you know, he saw fit to remove Frank's as well, just in a different way. This is not about you. You can't fix you. How are you going to fix anybody else? You are uniquely equipped to carry a message to the still sick and suffering alcoholic. And it is selfish if you do not. Say a prayer, thank God you are still alive, and show him that you mean it. See, this thing that we're doing, we love to have fun in AA, and there's nothing wrong with it. You know, we like our bowling trips, we like our dances. Where's the solution to alcoholism? We hide it in our meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. We hide it in a book called Alcoholics Anonymous. Where the solution is, right? Here's what we hear, some common misconceptions in our meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. They say things like, play the tape all the way through. Remember your last drunk. That is not the way that I got well. I don't have with sufficient force the ability to remember the humiliation of a week or even a month ago. I have, and I heard an old timer say this one time, and I actually like it, a built-in forgetter. Here's the stuff I remember. I remember the sunny days, right, outside, having a couple, Zimas, playing cornhole, right? I remember those things, right? But for some reason, when I still had an alcoholic mind, and my alcoholic mind told me to drink, I never thought of the vision of my mother sobbing in front of me, begging me to stop, saying she just wished she could love me enough for me to stop. And then looking at her right between the eyes, saying, "You're right. I'm done forever. You could have attached me to a lie detector test and I would have passed it. I wanted to be done forever, but I was trying to power a car with a AAA battery Lack of power is my dilemma. I did not know that. I was not educated on that. I had been to AA. You want to know what they were telling me? Keep coming back. It works if you work it. Work what? I come into AA, I don't know a thing of what you guys are talking about. They say, oh, we got this big book. And I was like, that doesn't look like a big book. I've seen bigger books. Like, I don't understand. I don't get it when I walk into Alcoholics Anonymous and you're laughing. I think you're laughing at me. I don't feel like I belong. When I first walk into AA, the difference between alcohol and alcoholism are 3 letters, ISM. When I first walk into AA, those letters stand for I separate myself when I first walk in. Little did I know, they actually really stand for an internal spiritual malady. What I suffer from is in here. I'm looking for something outside of me to fix something on the inside. That's where alcohol comes in. Right? Dancing in, wearing a top hat with a cane, flipping around, like, yeah, like we're ready to go. Here it is. Ding, 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 ding. Spiritual experience. First time I put alcohol in my system. Call it wine and spirits for a reason. Right? I had a spiritual experience. People come into AA, I can't have a spiritual experience. Dude, you've probably had thousands. You ever fallen in love? There's a spiritual experience. Spiritual experience is defined as a profound change in perception. Right? And it tells us back in the appendix 2, way back in the book, if you have a 4th edition on 567, right, it tells us that we have a profound alteration in our reaction to life. That is a profound change in perception. Dr. Silkworth calls it an entire psychic change. There's many different words to describe this thing, but we have had them. Lots of them. All that we're asking, right, is to have a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps, which is a promise. Right before the first comma in the 12th step is a promise. If I suffer from a spiritual malady, spiritual illness, that means I need a spiritual solution. I don't need cheap group therapy. Anyone ever been to an AA meeting where they start talking about, it's called a topic discussion meeting? You guys ever been to any of those? Right? And then the topic comes up. Usually it's a couple of these, right? Or one, right? Humility, gratitude, okay? And then they talk about the exact opposite for an entire hour. Right? I can't pay my electric bill. I'm going through a divorce. My neighbor's dog won't stop barking. How extremely selfish do we have to be to do exactly what we were doing to everyone else out there in here? Who are we helping when we talk about our problems? You want to know what God did for people like us? He planted people on this earth that spent a lot of money and went to college for a long time to help people like us. Therapists, counselors, psychiatrists. They're everywhere. If I was going to get advice, no offense, I love everyone in here. If I was going to get advice about my crumbling marriage, I wouldn't do it with a bunch of alcoholics. Right? I mean, really, I love you guys. If I wanted to talk about, like, I don't know, like a good mixer, right, for cheap vodka, you guys are the people. So let's bring solutions to our meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? What's the real problem? If every time I relapse I did it sober, my thinking is the problem. Newcomer walks into AA, shaking a little bit, right? Instead of saying things like, hey, I saved a seat for you, wait for the miracle to happen, we'll love you till you love yourself, why don't we ask him a point-blank question? Are you willing to do whatever it takes to never drink ever again? I thought this was one day at a time. Yeah, we live life one day at a time. We stay sober forever. Are you interested in that? And if the answer is yes, tell them, okay, we won't find that answer in this meeting. How about you and I go and read a couple things out of the book to make sure that you're a real alcoholic. Okay, let's make sure that we're all on the same page, literally, same page. 44, if you didn't know. Hey, make sure you're qualified as a real alcoholic, right? So you were on the same page. and then let's do the things that are required to get well. Or we can make them sit through the meeting for an hour and hope that Angry John at our local clubhouse doesn't get to him first. Keep coming back, kid. Don't drink even if your you-know-what falls off. Am I the only one that's heard these things? I don't think so. I think they're pretty widespread. It's kind of like a cancer that runs through our program. Self-help. This is not self-help. This is self-abandonment. I need to get away from me. If I can get away from me, then I can think about you. It's the only way this thing works. There's an unofficial poll that we can't take. And this is a question that we'll never have an exact answer to. But I think using our experience, we might be able to answer it quite accurately. Little Timmy comes in with the shakes, a little sick still. Comes in, sits down at our meeting. Go for an hour, talk about whatever, right? Who knows? Maybe it's a solution-based meeting, maybe it's not, right? Little Timmy's still a little shaky. We say our prayer at the end. Little Timmy goes out, gets behind the wheel, gets drunk, leaves, smashes his car up, and dies in a car accident. What are the odds? I know there's some betters out there. What are the odds that little Timmy heard "keep coming back" as he walked out the door? He can't keep coming back. He is dead. Frank can't keep coming back. He is dead. 20 people in the last hour. Well, there's still another 3 minutes left. So between now and the end of this hour, there's one more. We could make a decision now to say, you know what? He's probably wrong. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I feel fine. We don't need to worry about all that. He's probably fluffing the numbers a little bit. Or we take this opportunity to kind of reflect inwardly a smidge. I know it might be a little scary. But let's think about, what is the last thing we're telling the newcomer as they walk out the door after just coming back from another bender? Maybe they should be offered a solution before they walk out that door, before being offered an empty, hollow, keep coming back. Let's offer them a solution. I can't do that, Marin. I only have X amount of days sober. Yes, you can. But you can't transmit something you don't got. I love it people hit me with big book stuff. You want to know what? That seems valid. But I'm alive and I shouldn't be. Here's what I can transmit. I can transmit God's grace and I can transmit God's mercy. Don't tell me at day 1 that I can't, or day 2 that I can't, or that I shouldn't. That's even worse. You can't help someone. You don't have enough sobriety time. Sobriety time means as much as your shoe size, folks. Let's forget about all that. You can be proud of your sobriety time, that's fine. You can be proud of how long that you've been doing whatever you shouldn't have been doing. Okay, great. That's fine. Be proud of that. Who are we helping? We have an amazing opportunity in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous to help the sickest people on planet Earth. We can when no one else can. Our book tells us that exactly. We can't when no one else can. Thanks, guys. My name is Marin. I appreciate it. Thank you.
My name's Ron, I'm an alcoholic. Thanks again, Myron. Let's give him more. There's so much work behind the scenes to go on here. Howard was in here working for 3 hours on yesterday, cleaning up the floors from all the time we were away. There's so many people that are volunteering. Let's thank everybody for all their help. Monday night in here, we have a literature and step group at 6 p.m. I think we're on step 5. It's a really good workshop. We're actually on YouTube, so see us after the meeting. We got CDs, we got a whole bunch of stuff. It's always, we're about transmitting recovery and sharing it with as much people as we can so they can get free and go enjoy life and help others, right? That's the whole premise of this group, is to carry a message of hope and recovery, because we know how important it is. We're gonna need some help cleaning up. If you wanna help throw these chairs on the rack, great, and put some stuff away. Don't forget the meeting after the meeting. Let's close up, and if you care to join us, we'll just sit prayer where we're in our seats. Say a moment of silence for the still sick and suffering alcoholic in and out of the rooms, and we'll end with the Lord's Prayer if you care to join us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. See you next week.